All right, welcome back to Social Media Day. Again, I'm Scott Kramer, your host. Having a great time. Aaron King was amazing. I hope you guys are enjoying yourself. I got a quick little tip for you before I bring the next speakers up, which you're going to love. I want to share this with you. Part of the content game. Think like television. All right. Every medium in history, okay, has this idea of a television has programming and has commercials. Newspapers have editorial and ads. Magazines have editorial and ads. Radio has speaking and commercials. All right. I want you to start thinking this way real quickly. Okay. Think like a television. All right. Think like a television show. I come from television. 30-minute show is actually 22 minutes of the actual program and 8 minutes of commercials. So when you're posting content, do you think people want to watch commercials? Or do you think they want to see content? They want to be entertained, educated, enlightened. All right. So I want you to think about your posts like you're programming a network, because you are a network on social media. Are you producing commercial content or editorial content? More of that, less of that. That's a quick tip. All right. Let's bring up the next. The next two speakers are amazing. You're going to love them. I call them the doctors of social. I hope you guys don't mind that, but I love it. Stephanie Boyer is the co-founder of Rainmakers, a virtual platform for training and assessing sales talent. She's winner of a lot of different awards from teaching, innovation, research, service in the field, and she is a member of the 2021 Forbes Next 1000. Sharmin Attaran is a marketing professor and director of the nation's #1 digital marketing program at Bryant University. She's also the co-author of the Little Black Book on Social Media and the Little Black Book of Social Selling. So it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Stephanie Boyer and Dr. Sharmin Attaran. Take it away.
All right, welcome everyone. We're Dr. Sharmin Attaran and Dr. Stephanie Boyer, and we're so thrilled to be with all of you today because we're here to share how to communicate online in a way that helps you build trust. Because our goal here is to ultimately build, right, a strong connection with your audience and hit your goals. And so we're going to share tips and tricks that you can use today to strengthen your online strategy and avoid any of those pitfalls that get you stuck, right? Because our ultimate goal is to help you get online and get better results in less time, all by using a strategy that's built around trust. So Stephanie, she's going to share why what you're about to hear is distinct from our usual conversations about social media.
Well, that is right, Shar. Today, we're taking a totally different approach to social media strategy by focusing on trust. When we understand trust, which is the foundation of all relationships, even those that are online, we can create better relationships. So I'm going to share the components of trust to help you find better ways to communicate online, which is where a ton of people get stuck. And if you understand trust, you'll know what to write or you'll know what to say on your own, regardless of what the algorithm is saying or doing. And it doesn't even matter which platform you're using. So there are 6 C's of trust, just to make it easy for you to remember. And the first one is connection. So connection is all about finding something that you have in common. We like people. We trust people who are like us, who can relate to us, whether it's our interests or our struggles. The next C of trust is candor. That's honesty. Do you speak the truth? Can people take what you're saying as real? Next, we have concern. Do you care about other people and not just yourself? Then we have competence. So competence, do you know what you're talking about? Can I rely on you? And I know we all have that friend that we would never ask us to pick up from the airport or take us to the airport early in the morning because we get that call from them 2 hours before our flight was supposed to leave that they just woke up. They missed their alarm clock, right? So that's all competence. The next one over here is character. Are you going to do the right thing when no one's looking? And then finally, I wanted to talk about consistency. Are you regularly showing up? And do people know what to expect from you? or with you. And what it is that we like to know what to expect. That makes us trust. So if you can understand how relationships work based on this lens of trust, you can start to think through on your own future ideas of what to say and what to do when the rest of us are not around. All right. So now that you know what makes up trust, today we're going to share some social strategies that are around to help you earn trust. And that all relates to building relationships. So first, we're going to talk about content marketing strategies. So you're building content. So how do you build it with authenticity? Next, we're going to talk about common ways of outreaching to your audience that can either improve or remove trust. Then we're going to talk about how to nurture interactions, right? So we're going to talk about how to build community, how to build up engagement with these interactions that we're nurturing. And finally, too often, money is just left on the table. And we're going to give you a solution to that with value sequencing. So let's go ahead and dive right into the content. Sharmin, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. All right. Let's talk about something that we're all familiar with. Okay. Going to a party, right? So let's say we're all at a party and there's a few different type of people you might meet at a party, right? There's the wallflower, right? That just kind of sits back, doesn't speak, just kind of observes and their surroundings. They're not that much fun, right? Then there's like the polar opposite person who does all the talking and just kind of goes on, doesn't really ask questions. That's also no fun, right? But the person you actually want to meet is someone who has something to say, maybe tells a story, asks you a question, listens, right? Shows some empathy and really tries to connect with you. Someone who's really engaging, right? We want to hang out with that person. We want to get to know that person. And in fact, maybe even be friends. And that's the same thing that goes on for online and social media. Social media, right? People are looking to connect with each other. So how can you take some of those in-person communication best practices and engage that way online, right? How can we build connection, relationships, and trust online? Well, we're going to have to create a communication strategy, right? Or a content marketing strategy that's going to incorporate those 6 C's of trust that Stephanie just shared with us. But before we get into all the different types of content, I'm going to back up for a minute because I have a feeling that some of you might be saying, I don't see why I need to use social media to communicate with people, right? Okay, point taken. But we have to remember that we have this powerful tool, right? The internet, social media platforms, where we don't have to go door to door. We don't have to show up to parties. In fact, we can engage and communicate with many at once, right? This one to many from the comfort of our own homes. Right. And I, prefer in my yoga pants. So, and so some of you, okay, might be saying, well, I know I need to post on social media platforms, but I don't know what to post. And some of you might be saying, I've been posting, but I really just feel like I'm wasting my time. And some of you might be saying, well, I've been posting and sometimes I do really well, but a lot of the times I don't. Well, I'm here to say that every single one of you are legitimate in your feelings. But let's look at a common scenario where you reach out to me and I don't know you or anything about you. So maybe you do it through DM. So I click on your picture or on your face, on your name, and I start to look through your profile, check you out, see who you are. And if I don't see any content, I might not perceive your outreach as credible and I might not respond. And that's not the result that we're looking for, right? But we definitely don't want to just post kind of any content and toss it out and expect that we're going to get a ton of business. We want a really effective and efficient strategy where our time is used wisely, right? We're all really busy. And we don't want to haphazardly waste our hours without getting the positive outcome that we deserve, right? So that's why we need a content marketing strategy. So you can really build these long-term relationships with your customers. You can, and then they can feel comfortable, purchasing products and services from you. So Stephanie, she shared the 6 different types of trust earlier. I'm just going to cover the top 3 in terms of your content. So competence, candor, and consistency. So when we are incorporating competence in the content of what you post, that means showing that you know what you're talking about, that you're the expert, that you're knowledgeable in your field, and that people can come to you for advice, right? So let's talk about some of the ways we can do this. We can share informative content that's going to provide real value to your audience. And I'm going to give you an example. I run a foodie account. I love to eat. It's called Hangry Girl Rhode Island. So I love going to restaurants. So I post anything related to food, right? So what I could do is I could easily share a really great new restaurant in town, maybe some images of the food, and maybe some really specific tips, like make sure to go on Mondays because there's half price apps, right? Another thing I could do is, you can provide product demonstrations or tutorials or educational content. So I might take, that really great dish that I tried in the restaurant and share a recipe on how to make that at home. And in that video, right, I could share the ingredients I'm using, how to make it, maybe how to style the dish, what to pair with it. And in your case, you could explain how to use each of those products that you have and why you love them. And by doing this, you're showcasing your expertise, you're instilling confidence and trust in your audience, and then they can rely on you for quality recommendations and advice. And then once you have, this is the last point here, once you have your team or your group that's kind of interested in your products, you can start to share industry news. Right? And here, maybe it's a new product launch, maybe it's a new promotion or a new event. All right, the next thing is demonstrating candor, and that involves being open, being honest, and being transparent with your audience. Remember, we trust people that are like us. So you want to think about, what do you have in common, right? Have you been through a similar experience? Maybe you're sharing the same struggles, right? You want to connect with your audience and maybe share personal journey towards achieving a better life, maybe your struggles, your successes, maybe some of the lessons that you've learned. So you can do this with some behind the scenes content. You can also do this by just being vulnerable, right? Allow yourself to be honest and don't be afraid to share. Don't worry about being judged. Just be who you are and share that story, right? That vulnerability actually builds trust. And the one thing we hear about a lot, UGC, user-generated content, right? This is a really powerful tool. It builds trust, right? Because it provides this social proof, this third-party testimonial, right? Or verification that your brand has value and is of quality. And when people see other people using your products and services, it creates that sense of trust. It creates that credibility that's kind of hard to achieve with other forms of marketing. So that UGC can really help to create a sense of community amongst your customers, which can really further strengthen their loyalty to your brand. Now, do we have questions from the audience?
I don't think so.
All right, great. So I'm going to move on to consistency. All right. So consistency in your content really builds trust, right? Because people are going to know what to expect. So you want to be consistent in a couple different ways, right? You want to be consistent with who you are, right? With your voice, right? If you're trying to be someone else and not true to yourself, people, they're going to notice that. You can also post regularly and consistency on all your platforms. That's going to show people that you are dependable, that you are reliable. And that means you got to set a schedule, right? You can kind of see an image there of a schedule, right? And you've got to stick to it. You don't want to take big chunks of time off. And if you use a scheduling tool, that's really going to help you with that. And finally, as you can also kind of see there, some consistent branding, right? Branding in your bio, your image, your logo, the font, the colors that you use, right? And so if you're consistent with this across all platforms, you can establish that trust with your audience and build a strong identity. And I believe before we go on to the next section, we might have a question here. If not, I'll hand it over to Stephanie.
Scott, do we have any questions? Well, I guess we don't have any questions then.
There I am.
Right.
Sorry.
Hey.
I had a problem getting up on the screen. No, it's going fantastic. You know, you mentioned one. I know I got a question about this, the one to many, and this idea of kind of filling to find new people to talk to. I mean, can you speak about how not only it's a one to many kind of approach, but how you then kind of drill down to create a relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, the idea here is to use your time effectively and efficiently to build content that would hit multiple personas, right? A lot of different people that you're trying to target through your social media profiles. And then Stephanie's actually going to talk about how to do that one-to-one interaction. But with social, we can schedule our content. We can get others to post on behalf of the company because they love your product and they have had a lot of success using it. And that's that UGC. So it's really important to really strategize. What are we going to share? How often? Come up with a really great cadence. And then your one, effort can be broadcast to so many people in a really strategic and efficient way.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we've got more questions, but I'll save them to the end. I want you guys to keep going because it's great content. Keep going.
Oh, thanks so much. Let's see. Oh, there it is, right there on the screen. That was actually a really good segue, Scott, to get into what we're going to talk about next. And now we're talking about outreach, right? That one-to-one, when you're building your community, you're finding clients, right? That's what you're doing with your business. So you're sending outreach messages. And luckily, there's a science behind what works and what doesn't work. So we all know those people who are constantly reaching out, but they have limited or no success. They might join events and groups, and then they immediately start bombarding everyone with ads for their businesses, kind of like what Scott was talking about, right? There's no listening to what people want. So why is it that we really don't even like that? Well, spamming people shows lack of concern. Going back to trust, shows lack of concern for others. So even if they do care, those messages say that they don't care. And they never really make a genuine connection, finding something that's in common before they start selling. So let's take a look at some outreach messages that I received. Let's look at them together and think about connection and think about concern. Are these good, trustworthy messages that establish common ground and show concern? Or is it really about them? So let's click through some of these messages here. Stephanie, I'm always interested in connecting with founders. I hope you're open to it. Let's see, what else? Stephanie, I just came across your profile and we have similar connections. I want to expand my network. Stephanie, I see you're also in the coaching industry. I'd love to have you in my network, but just curious, do you have a coaching business? Like that is just really confusing to me too, right? Like you're in this industry, but do you have a business? I'm not really sure. The next one, LinkedIn suggested that several times we should meet because of what you do, and we should connect. So after looking at your profile, I would have to agree. Then the last one, I work with a lot of people or in higher academia. I'm not sure what higher academia is. I'd love to connect and get to know you more. Okay. So what is wrong with these messages that we're seeing here? Well, first of all, you see a lot of I's, and I just heard Aaron saying that too. You change the I to you, and you don't see any real value to connect. And all of them are just really telling me what they want, but not what makes this relationship interesting to both of us. So the first tip I would say is don't make it all about you, and instead show me you know me. Now imagine the person on the receiving end of this message is shouting this to you. Show me you know me, right? So start off a message that's about them. Why should they care? Do you have some information about them that proves you're not a robot or a scammer? Because so many people are concerned about that these days. Try to find some common ground. A robot doesn't like the same foods, didn't grow up in the same town, didn't have kids, right? And think, what is it that they have to gain? Really show that you care. And what element of trust is this? It's concern to find out what's happening in their world, and then also connection to find something that you both can actually relate to. All right, so how do you outreach? Well, you want to start out with a hook. You've got to grab their attention. You have to find that thing that you have in common, a connection. Remember, prove that you are not a robot. Next is value. Show that you care. So think about, like, what's in it for me, for that person on the other end. People don't care about what you want. They care about what they want. And if you can appeal to this, then you're really showing concern. You're showing that you care. And then finally, we have that call to action. So what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What's the next reasonable step? And a lot of people fail here to actually move the conversation forward because they're often afraid to ask. It's fear of rejection. So I run the sales program at Bryant University, and I need speakers and sponsors. So I'm constantly reaching out to VPs of sales, and I might say something like, hi, Sarah, you're hiring at sales schools, right? I'm a sales prof. We host a sales competition with 70 universities. You'd be a great fit to join us. Are you open to a quick call, right? It could be something that simple. That's including all those different elements in there. All right. So now we've talked about bad outreach and what to do about it. So let's look on the other end of the spectrum here. Now, consider your life for a moment, all of the competing priorities that you have. And occasionally, like it or not, well, I don't know if anybody likes it, sometimes things fall through the cracks. And as you're preparing to respond to an important message, maybe your boss needs something right away, or your kids are sick, or you just remembered you need to pick up eggs at the store, right? That message that you were typing, it's long forgotten. People need help remembering. So remember, at the end of the day, you're helping people with your products and your services, and reminding people who are a good fit for what you're selling is actually really useful. So don't get frustrated. People typically are not going to respond to you on your first try. They actually really will appreciate the reminder that you give them. So, how many outreaches does it take to get a customer? The research shows that it takes 8 to 18 exposures to your brand. Now, a common pitfall is just giving up too early for people that are interested. There is a big trend out there that you outreach one time and then you just give up, right? So if the person seems like they're interested, please give them a chance. They may have some interest, maybe if they're responding to some of your messages, your posts on social media. And remember that following up really shows that you care. It shows concern. And finally here, outreaching. So how do you show you care? By following up in multiple outreaches to the right people. Okay, so first, don't ask for the business before you know it's a good fit. And then remember to engage them. So don't let them fall out of contact for 2 months and then try to come back, right? If they are, obviously come back to them, but don't let that happen in the first place. So one step to also remember is thinking about those important dates, those important holidays, those birthdays. Set a reminder on your calendar. Use a program to track the outreaches and the conversations that you're having. There are so many free tools out there to help you do this. It's really, really easy. And then remember, at each outreach, you should add value. There should be no, oh, I'm just checking in with you, right? think, what makes you feel like someone genuinely cares about your well-being? If they're a foodie, send a recipe. If they like exercise, send them a 5K or some kind of event. It doesn't always need to be about the business. So showing that you care, that you remember, that you're thinking of them, it builds trust. Now, outreaching without value shows you care more about you than it shows you really care about them. So when we show more humility and concern, you build better relationships that really last. So I don't know, Scott, if you had any questions. I know we were running just a little bit behind. So I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm passing it on to Sharmin so that we can talk about nurturing interactions and making the most of that back and forth dialogue that's happening in the comments.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, so this is the piece of the puzzle that gets forgotten time and time again. You spend all this time creating content, you're reaching out to your network, but your content is just not being engaged with, right? And that is so frustrating. So how can we nurture interactions online and really get kind of the engagement that you want? Well, I'm going to share a couple tips with you. So the first one is to ask questions, right? You really want to encourage conversation by asking open-ended questions related to the topic of your post. And when you ask a question on social media, it actually triggers a human natural response to find an answer. This means that when you're asking questions, it's an easy and effective way to spark the conversation, create a sense of community, and really increase that engagement. Because even if someone doesn't want to engage with you directly, if you ask a question, that might encourage them to stop and actually read your post to find the answer. And that's going to create this dialogue, right? A much deeper connection with the person that you're engaging with. But you'll definitely want to research a couple questions that might be floating around in your industry. And that's really going to give you a little bit more insight into your niche too. And we'll talk about that. All right, the next thing is to be genuine and authentic when you respond to the posts and to the comments. So it means you need to really take time and read the post, right? And you want to leave a thoughtful, maybe even a personalized comment and really avoid those generic automated responses that can come off as kind of insecure or insincere, sorry. And another way that you could signal authenticity might be to really respond in a really timely manner. And this means you've got to keep an eye out for those notifications so that you can respond to anyone who comments, anyone who messages you or mentions you real promptly. And that's going to show that you're a very active and engaged person with your audience. And then you're also going to want to take the time to read the post and write that thoughtful response. And bonus points, right? If you can actually relate one of your own personal stories, right? That's going to make the post so much more authentic, so much more genuine. And don't forget that you can use the @ symbol, right? The mention, so that they can actually get a notification every time that you're engaging with them. And you can just, really keep that conversation going by asking a follow-up question, really further encouraging that discussion. And when you're genuine, you're going to build that sense of community, that engagement around your brand. The next point is to show appreciation, right? Thank your commenters. If someone has taken time out of their busy schedule to comment on your content, to share something valuable, maybe it's their experience, maybe it's their story, maybe it's that user-generated content, you want to acknowledge it, right? You want to thank them for their contribution because this really shows your appreciation and it's going to encourage them to continue to interact with your brand in the future. This can also help build, reciprocity and goodwill. And all of those social media platforms out there give you all these variety of reactions, right? You've got emojis, you've got GIFs, you've got full-length comments, right? And so depending on how you use them, you can get really close to someone who's, praised you, or you can keep things really casual. I like emojis. I like to use them a lot. I love GIFs, for example, like the happy dance, right? You can use that to express yourself. You can use a text box and write something really short, or you could be really thoughtful and write kind of a longer message. And you can really mix it up, right? And it depends on the platform. So on Facebook, you can just put like a one-liner or an emoji. Whereas on Twitter, if you just retweet someone, that's going to put a spotlight on someone who complimented you. And that's usually really, really nice. Then on Instagram, right, you could DM and just thank them in a comment. On Snapchat, you can send like a smiling selfie or even a video. And then on TikTok, you can just record a really quick clip and use a thank you hashtag, and that's going to do the job. So you can kind of use social media to show off different sides of your personality and really express your appreciation in a few unique ways. And the last thing I'm going to share with you is how you can be a detective, right? And you can use search strategies to find the conversations that are happening about your brand in real time, right? And actually engage with people in real time. And so you can search these conversations with using relevant keywords, relevant hashtags, and you can find those conversations. For example, on Twitter, all you have to do is put in a keyword and a question mark, and you can find all the questions related to that keyword. So let's say I wanted to know what people have questions about golf, right? So I'll put in golf question mark or golfing question mark, and I'm going to find all these questions people have. And then I can create content to answer those questions, or I can jump in on that conversation and offer some advice. And if you use these tips, you can really monitor your social media, find those conversations about your brand, and engage in a real meaningful way with your audience. And with questions being at the end, I think, Stephanie, we're going to wrap it up with value sequencing. Take it away.
Thanks, Shar. All right. So we talked about earlier how easy it is to get distracted, that following up with value is key. So think about the journey your people are on. Some of them haven't really responded to you yet. Others, you might have heard some response, some engagement. Perhaps you've gotten some likes or some comments on social media. Some of them might have even purchased from you once. Others could be on auto renewal. Maybe some recently signed up, and some of them have probably been there for a while, right? And your messaging should reflect their journey. Now, sequencing is setting up those messages. So I'm going to go over that initial outreach message, a few tips and ideas to keep in mind before you get the first response, and then also after they respond. So just real quick, why does sequencing work? Well, meeting people where they are, with regular touch points, of course, shows competence. It shows concern as well as consistency. So that's like a triple of trust, right? All right, so let's get into this. You are in your initial outreach phase, and it's time to reach out, right? You need to have some things maybe to remember when you're putting some of those messages together. So here are some lessons that I'm going to share with you, some of the things that we've learned from sales that make that initial outreach better. And I put it together in an acronym called SPORT. And if you've seen me before, then you know I love to put things on acronyms because it makes it so much easier to remember. So be a good sport when you don't hear back on that first attempt, and follow some of these easy points. All right. So first, remember how busy you are. Don't write a dissertation. Keep it super short when you reach out. Space your lines so that you can make it a little bit more easy to read. All right. And then another thing that you've heard a couple times from me already here is to prove that you're not a robot. People crave human interaction. So what do you know about someone? What can you find out? What can you say that a robot couldn't say? Think about personalizing that outreach. Point out something that you have in common. Are you from the same town? Do you have similar interests? This is going to help you to stand out. And then think about using outreach method variety. So what does this mean? It means don't just stick to one platform, right? Don't just stick to direct messaging on Instagram, not get a response, and then you're giving up. They may not even check it. Sometimes I don't check my direct messages. And I teach this stuff, right? I do this and I generate business online. So one of the things that you can do too, you can comment on their post. Another thing, maybe you can just send them a message. If you have other means of contacting them, maybe you have their phone number, you can text them. Maybe you can actually pick up the phone and call them. I know that's scary. And there's so many other platforms that you can use. I'd say one thing, you can try 3 different methods on the same day, that first day, to grab maximum attention. And some of the best visibility that you can get is to comment on their content a few times in a row. And they're probably going to notice that. They might even notice that before some of that direct messaging comes in. All right. And then remind them. Don't just send one message and leave it, like we said earlier. And also don't put the burden on yourself every single time to create new value with new messages. You can simply say, bumping this message up, and then just let the message speak for itself because you took the time to show you weren't a robot. You took the time to show value. Or you could say, bringing this to the top of your inbox in case you missed it. Remember, reminders are helpful. And finally, timing. What's the timing you'll use? Perhaps day 1 is 3 methods. Give it a day. If you haven't heard back from them, you can maybe come back on day 3 and bump it to a previous message, like the outreach message or the DM or the email that you're using. Try a few different strategies and see what works. Also think about the context. Like, are you messaging them at 11 p.m. and they're not seeing it? So think about, when are your potential customers active on social? It's a good idea to reach out to them at this time. All right. So now you've received a response. The person has engaged with your social, they've acknowledged, and they showed a little interest. So you've got to keep them engaged by adding value with multiple touches. Now you might say, how? Well, remember important events. Ask them how you can help them. When you're talking to them, listen to their goals and align them with the opportunity or the product. Just don't go right into the sale immediately. You need to hear them so that you can establish psychological truth. And I'm going to use this acronym here called PLEASE, another acronym to help you remember. And it starts with that psychological truth. You may not have ever heard about psychological truth before, but psychological truth is listening and understanding others, hearing their story so that you understand them. And when you understand others, you earn your own right to be heard. Next is listening. So listen to them, use active listening, paraphrasing, restating, right? Show that you're part of the conversation, not just right? And getting them to stop talking so you can talk. Next is showing empathy. So if they're upset, show concern. If they're excited, get excited with them. Next is accept where they are. Don't get upset if they're not ready yet. Everyone is on their own journey here. So you also want to focus any discussion about a product or about an opportunity specifically on how it solves their problem. Don't word vomit all over them or feature dump. Nobody wants that. And finally, here is to engage. If they're responding, be sure to respond within 24 hours or less. I actually wrote a paper over the pandemic, and we were looking at brands and trustworthy brands and how you feel about brands and people. And those brands that did not respond within 24 hours saw a major decline in trust and value from their customers. All right. So make sure that you are focusing on all of these areas, commenting, make sure that you're liking their social, make sure that you're answering any direct questions that they're giving, especially if you are in that specific conversation and it's going back and forth there. All right. So I don't see any questions, and I know that we are running a bit short on time here. And we have shared so much with you about building trust. when you're writing content, when you're outreaching to customers, when you're interacting on social, and when you're using message sequencing as a reminder tool to scoop up customers and keep your community strong. So we hope that you are feeling empowered and confident about using social media to build your business. So please refer to the workbook if you'd like to reach out to us, to follow our content. And thank you so much for tuning in with us. And we look forward to cheering you along on your journey.
Amazing. Amazing job. You know, the question came in, you actually answered it. The one that then I really wanted to lean into this one. Well, you said it takes 8 to 18 impressions or 8 times to, frequency to reach somebody to really get through them. You can take that same strategy and apply it to your content strategy of knowing, don't just put it all in one post, spread it out like you're telling a story. So which I think then you guys came in and started talking more about. Great stuff. Great training. Really to the point. I absolutely loved it. I got a lot out of it, and I know our audience did as well. So I also was I was remiss in, I should have mentioned that you both actually are fellows of the DSEF, or DSEF fellows, right? Which is the Direct Selling Education Foundation. So on behalf of the DSA, Joe and Melissa asked, wanted to make sure that we say thank you. And from the industry, we say thank you for everything you do for this industry, keeping it up to date, keeping us smart and on our toes with social media. It's been an absolute honor having you part of Social Media Day, and I hope you'll be a part of everyone from here on out. So thank you both, doctors. Do you like that, the doctors of social? I think there's something there.
I love it. That's fun.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you brought, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.